I'm Tom Oberheim, talking to you from the 2017 NAMM show in Anaheim, California.
There's the happy side
it's always fun to be at NAMM. This is probably my 35th or some crazy number. But we're doing something that we've never done before. We're going back in the past, and I brought an example of my two first electronic music products. My very first electronic music product, 1970, was the Oberheim ring modulator. It was the first ring modulator that was available for a performing musician. There were ring modulators in labs, but they weren't good for live performance. This was good for live performance. Then 1971, I brought out my phase shifter, and this was the first phase shifter on the market also. And so those are my first two products. And so for the early 70s, I built these two effect units as well as a couple more. But then 1975, I decided to get in the analog synthesizer business, and I brought out what I call the synthesizer expander module. Its original purpose was to expand the palette you could get with an ARP 2600 or a Mini Moog, because I had a different filter, slightly different organization, and so it complemented the ARP 2600 and Mini Moog and the other analogs at the time. But then in 1975, I decided to put four of these modules together with a digital scanning keyboard, and I had the first polyphonic synthesizer you could buy in a music store, and that was in 1975.
Wow, I mean, and I didn't realize that this was originally going to be for just as an expander module. I didn't realize that. That's
right. In fact, the real impetus for doing the synthesizer expander module was in 1972. I designed a digital sequencer. I had worked in the computer business for 11 years before getting into electronic music, and I designed a digital sequencer that you could load from the keyboard. It loaded both pitches and durations, and so you could just load the sequence from your ARP 2600 or Mini Moog keyboard. The problem was, once you had loaded the sequencer, either the sequencer played your synthesizer or you played your synthesizer, but you couldn't do both. So I said, what the world needs a very simple little synthesizer module, so you can play your synthesizer and the sequencer can play the new module. Little did I know that several years later, I'd put those together, developed the Oberheim 4-voice, 8-voice, and that's when things
classic.
happen.
And also, still to this very day, I mean, the OB6, also, which I reviewed actually not that long ago, and just the sound of it, when you hear it, you just go, that's that sound. You can't get it anywhere else.
So one other thing that we have here at the NAMM show, we've had for a couple of years, is again back in 1975, I developed a small synthesizer that used two SEMs with a little mini sequencer called the interestingly enough, it's called the 2-voice.
It's beautiful.
This part where we had two modules was the same on the original, but the mini sequencer was very simple in the original unit. I brought this back out a couple years ago with a sequencer that's much more capable than the original. So
yeah, and that's a blackface one, which
we got black and we got beige.
So tell me about these guys as well, because this looks like it's been renamed. Was this the SEM Plus before?
Yeah. Now we showed this in a mock-up form a year ago as the SEM Plus, and we didn't like that name, so we changed it to SEM-X. What this is the SEM module, SEM expander module, condensed down to URAC format with a couple of additional features, and 100% analog, 100% programmable.
And the patch panel is a separate part, right?
The patch panel is separate so that the user can put the patch panel either to the one side of the SEM-X or the other side.
And does that replicate the original breakout points in the original SEM?
Well, that and more.
And more,
yeah,
okay.
Because here we'll have, this has 32, but the final version of the patch panel has 35 jacks. So there'll be a lot to patch.
And you've also got some URAC versions of your original boxes here as well.
I've taken these two units and made Eurorack versions, exactly the same circuitry as from 1970, 1971, but in Eurorack format.
So they can get that classic sound.
Well, yeah, a lot of people have heard and used ring modulation. This is a very classic ring mod from the 70s. The phase shifter was the first phase shifter on the market, and it was really oriented more toward keyboard players, so it's not really a guitar phase shifter so much. It's a smoother sound, more oriented toward keyboards.
Right, okay.
So we'll have those in Eurorack.
So when are these guys available? Do you have a date and time?
Probably in May.
Tom, thank you so much.
Okay, nice to see you.